Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CEO Speaker Series. I'm Caden Vittorini, the CEO and founder of VitFactor, your host. And today we're joined by Steven Galanis, who is an American entrepreneur and the co-founder and CEO of Cameo, a marketplace where fans can book personalized video shoutouts from their favorite people. Recognized as one of Hollywood's top innovators by THR, The Hollywood Reporter, Steven has been named 40 under 40 by Crain's Chicago Business, Entrepreneur of the Year, Midwest Region by EY, Innovator of the Year by Chicago Inno, and has twice been named one of Goldman Sachs' 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs. Outside of Cameo, Steven is an active member of the YPO Chicago chapter, where he currently serves as chairman. Steven is active in the Great Lakes, Greece, and Miami chapters of Endeavor and a global network of high-impact entrepreneurs. He's also a co-owner of Major League Pickleball's Miami franchise, Miami Pickleball Club. This series is all about asking leaders what they wish they knew when they were in college. Let's dive in. So let's start with your path from student to CEO, Steven. Tell us a little bit about that path, your first job, major career decisions, and just overall leadership milestones.
Well, thanks for that intro. And it took a while, but we got to the fun thing with pickleball. Anyways, I went to Duke. I was a history major there, but what I majored in was kind of secondary importance to what I actually did while I was there. I entered Duke at a really cool time. Facebook was pretty much brand new, and it was still locked in where you could only join Facebook if you had a .edu address. And this was a really massive opportunity for like an aspiring entrepreneur. I ended up partnering with my buddy, Zach Maritas, who's kind of like an older brother. And in the early days of Facebook, we started an event management company that ran all the nightlife at Duke University in our era. So over the course of our 4 years, we ended up having a Facebook group with over 17,000 college students. We were throwing, dozens of events a week at bars at Duke, UNC, NC State, and it drew from the entire kind of Triangle region coming in. And this was really the first opportunity where I learned about network effect. I learned about the power of social media. I was on semester at sea studying abroad, and I would put a Facebook event out there and thousands of people would show up because we built a brand around this already. And for those of you listening that went to Duke or go to school in the Triangle, my best entrepreneurial success to date is Wednesday night beer pong at Cheaters, which still goes on about 20 years after we started it.
That's awesome. And no, that's something a great time in your experience at Duke and what you've created, even what you're doing when you're overseas and still managing back in the States here. So thinking back to college, what was a myth about success that you believed in college, and what was that actual reality?
Look, I was definitely not the person that was like in class every day. I can speed read, and I was one of those sickos that could go, like as a history major, the night before the exam, I would go in the library, read everything I was supposed to read for the quarter, write the paper, and do fine. I don't recommend that for everybody, but that's just how, my brain works and how I operate. But one of the things that I wish I had kind of taken, it was advice everybody gave. At the time, I was an entrepreneur, and I couldn't imagine going to like intern at a Goldman Sachs or going to intern at a Deloitte or McKinsey and like really getting that kind of world-class experience coming out of college. And the entrepreneur in me like was so allergic to that. I never applied for any of these internships. I never went through on-campus recruiting at all. I was always just going to go figure it out. And then, over the course of that time, the financial crisis was going on. I graduated 2010. So all those kids that had been working hard to get those internships got pulled. But I do regret a little bit not being at like a really world-class place for a couple of years, just to learn a lot of the foundational skills. I see kids that come and work for Cameo right out of college, and I see the growth and the skill set development they had. I was an options trader. I enjoyed that, for my first 4 or 5 years out of college, but I didn't learn skill sets that necessarily translated into the things that I was doing later. So while I don't think you have to know what you're going to do your whole life when you're in college, I think there's certain skill sets that are really valuable and worth pursuing. And that's the one thing, if I could go back, I would really push myself a little bit more to say, hey, even though you're going to be an entrepreneur one day, like learning how to put a pitch deck together or learning Excel, probably not the worst thing in the world, because you're going to need to learn how to do that stuff later. And it's better to do that on someone else's dime, probably.
I love that. What I'm hearing is just to learn as many skills as possible to, add to your resume, your inventory of just like knowledge. So that's awesome. If you could go back and say one thing to your college self, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the college self, what my big regret is, I'd been an entrepreneur, I'd been a business owner, and then it just ended broadly. And then I ended up going to work at this trading firm, starting at the very bottom and going from running a business that was really successful for 4 years to like getting people coffee and shit. And like literally, if I could go back, I would have just said, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I don't really care if my parents or what anybody else thinks. I just wish I'd like kept going on the entrepreneurship route, because I really spent 7 years post college working for other people when like it was always clear I was going to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, love that. And, thinking back to your early career, what's one major obstacle that you faced early on, and, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, the biggest obstacle, I think, when I started, when I was trading, I entered in trading, as I mentioned, right at the end of the financial crisis, but a lot of things had changed fundamentally. Technology had altered how open outcry market making worked. So if you think of CNBC and you see the people in the coats at the New York, stock exchange trading floors, or you've ever seen trading spaces, that's what I did. I was an open outcry market maker in the options markets. When I walked into the Chicago Board Options Exchange for the first time in summer of 2010, I literally remember thinking I was walking into the land before time dinosaur graveyard. There were these huge pits where over 40,000 people had been working. And today there were only 1,000 people, or at least in 2010, there were only 1,000 people left, because, there used to be physical pits where people would trade single stock options. And now that it all moved online and all moved to the screen. So I watched how that industry was kind of contracting. And yeah, I remember the mindset shift and how fixed mindset it was. The older guys there were all like, oh, Steven, you missed the good times. You missed 08. You missed the flash crash. You missed the .com bubble. And it was all the stories were about how great things were and how shitty things were now. And as a 22-year-old coming into a new industry, like that's not what you want to hear. And right. It was such a huge change when I ended up going to work for LinkedIn 4 or 5 years later. And it was all about what we are going to do and a mission and a vision. And, here's this huge thing that we're tackling and we're working towards it. So I just felt like I spent a little bit too much time in a very fixed mindset place that was hierarchical. I remember in particular being up as a clerk still. It was kind of like 2 years in, and usually after a year you get promoted, but things had gone really slow and our whole class was stuck doing a very entry level job because the business hadn't been performing enough to warrant promotions for everybody. Yeah. I remember one of the senior traders really screwed something up, and then, he motioned for me to do something. I did what he said. It was the wrong thing. And then he screamed at me, blamed me, etc. And I remember like this dynamic. He's 40 years old. I'm 22. And he basically said, like, there's a reason I'm down here and you're up there. And I remember telling him, hey, when I'm your age, I'm going to be on the beach. I'm not going to be there. Right. Like, and that was just one of those moments where like you see this fixed mindset and the people that kept doing these careers for 10, 20, 30 years that hated their job and weren't motivated by it anymore, but they just didn't have anywhere else to go. And I was really lucky to be able to pivot into tech and be at a place where, I was around people with growth mindsets. I was around people that wanted to change the world and like, find what really made them happy. And that was a really critical moment early in my career.
Yeah, that was actually, getting my next question there. Was there like one big moment, maybe it was that or something else even, where it kind of dramatically changed your career path?
Yeah, we had a year. The way that trading works, at least in our firm, was you had a pretty small base salary. Like when I started, I think it was a $30,000 base salary, and maybe every year you'd get a $5,000 or $10,000 raise. So most of your compensation, up to like 80% of it, would come in your bonus. And I remember I was 4 years in, I had a really good personal year, and it was a no bonus year for the firm. So like, imagine you're 26 years old, you've been making 6 figures, and all of a sudden you make 50 grand for the whole year. And I just remember thinking like, what the hell am I doing here? Right. Like, there's just too much to go do. There's too much things like to go pursue. Like for me to be spending every day here to make less than I used to make, in a month in my college business, like that, it's kind of crazy. So at the end of the day, what we ended up, that ended up being the impetus, and there was a point where we could basically take severance and leave and go find something else. And it just worked out really well that at that time, a buddy had called from LinkedIn, and I was able to go and join a team in LinkedIn and have a complete career pivot into tech sales. And it just kind of came at the right time.
That's great. And, I know you haven't been in college in a while, but you have some interns at Cameo, probably some other college students that you may know personally. But what do you think the biggest challenge that students face today?
I mean, there's a lot of them, right? Number one, I think AI is fundamentally going to change the job market. I think at the end of the day, people are not going to need as many employees as they needed previously. So one of the things, like when our intern class came in, the very first thing I did, I taught them all how to use Lovable. I taught them how to use Grok. I taught them how to use ChatGPT. Those are must-have skill sets coming in. But the opportunity for the college kids today is while they're in their dorm, they can be messing around and learning this stuff, as opposed to people that have been working for me for 10, people that have been working in their career for 10, 15 years, working for me for anywhere from, 3 to 9 years. They have to go relearn these skills. But I think the kids coming in, the big opportunity is, that all their smartest friends in their dorms, right? They're playing around with this stuff. And I saw it firsthand when I was at Duke. Fred Ursum, one of the founders of Coinbase, and Dan Romero, who was employee one there, those guys were literally my across the hall neighbors, and they worked for me in college, right? So, these guys were fucking around with Bitcoin, and I didn't get it. But when you're in college, the coolest thing is you're kind of never around a higher density of talent, day in and day out. You're living with these people. It's all your friends are smart. They're all going to class. So I just think it's such an opportunity, to find what your smartest, most interesting friends, what are they doing when they're just the stuff that they're doing that's kind of playing right now? That could be the next big thing.
Yeah, I love that. As a recent college grad and a business owner myself, Steven, I hear learning, just constantly learn, especially on the AI side of things. It doesn't hurt, right? If you learn it, you don't use it, then that's okay. But at least it in situations where you get hired for a full-time job.
I actually don't think that's okay. I will challenge that. I think that the reality is people who learn the tools and don't actually use them, they will absolutely struggle in this job market, and they will get replaced. So I tell everyone, AI and the robots are not coming for your job, but somebody that knows how to use the tools effectively and uses them all the time and integrates in their workflow, they are the people that are going to take your job. It's not the AI itself.
Nice. Yes. Very, very important. And I'm going to kind of switch gears here. We're going to get into some fun stuff in a second. But, I want you to pick a number 1 through 5, and you won't know the question until you choose that number.
Okay. You want me to tell you?
Yeah. What's the number? 1 through 5.
Are you going to be a mentalist?
No, I'll hear from you.
I'll take number 4.
What's a leadership mistake that you made and learned from?
I mean, I made a ton, but the biggest leadership mistake that I've made has been, and I've made this mistake a ton of times, it's hiring resume over curiosity and high ceiling. So often, especially when you're starting a business, you just find anybody that's willing to go work for you. And then when your business gets successful and you've got money, suddenly you can go hire people from great companies that have solved the type of problems that you're solving before. But pretty much all of the biggest mistakes I've ever made have come when I either hired over a high ceiling person that was growing and doing an excellent job, but maybe hadn't done it before, and brought in somebody with the big shiny resume that, was the central casting person that I could have put into the business. So I just think, today my best employee at the company is a woman named Mackenzie, who's our VP of Ops. Mackenzie literally started as an intern with us. She's been here for 8 years. She's been promoted 9 times. She's on a path to, go as high as you can possibly go at the company. She's unbelievable. When she was an intern, she actually didn't get a job offer right out of school because the job that we had her doing wasn't the perfect job. But she came up to me. She's like, I love this company so much. I would literally pay to be here this my whole life. I'm like, we could work with that. We put her in customer service. She crushed everything she did. She kept learning. So I've seen it happen. And you can't hire a McKinsey, off the block. But if you put time into, people that are kind, curious, hungry, humble, kind, curious learning machines that love to win, it compounds over time.
I love that. Great answer. Now we're going to do a lightning round of questions. So I'm going to ask you 6 questions, a little bit different here, and I want you to answer in 10 seconds or less. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Favorite college class?
Hip hop appreciation.
Your go-to coffee order?
I don't drink coffee.
Best
but I drink
book
green tea, ice green tea, unsweetened. Starbucks.
There we go. Best book or podcast recommendation?
Best book for a founder I've ever read is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Best podcast, I love the All In podcast.
Okay. Best productivity hack?
Best productivity hack. I like to gate my days. So like Monday is a certain thing I only work on, one thing, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it's the same thing every week. And nice. I found that to be like having a skeleton schedule to be really helpful.
Yeah, great. Last 2 questions here, and then we'll dive into the finalized ones here in a second. But your dream mentor, he or she could be dead or alive.
I've always taken a lot of wisdom from Ben Franklin. I'd love to have him on speed dial.
Yeah. What's something that you do every day that helps you stay grounded?
Pilates and a cold plunge.
There we go. All right, so we're done with the lightning round there. We're going to jump into 3 traits, habits, or skills that helped you go from a student to a successful CEO.
Curiosity, connecting with just this ability to connect with people. And then even more important from connecting, the ability to basically maintain a really, really high network that's much larger than the Dunbar's number. They say you can only know 150 people. And, there's probably many times that would say I'm one of their best friends in the world.
That's awesome. In the first couple ones, why those traits, habits, and skills?
Well, curiosity, it's all about learning, right? And I just think when we hire, I mentioned this earlier, we like at Cameo, we like to hire hungry, humble, kind learning machines that love to win. And that learning machine is so important because it's not over. You're always learning. You're always getting better. And even if you think you're the master at something, the difference between the person that's 99th percentile as a podcaster and 99.9 is logarithmic. It's exponential. So I just think that you can always keep honing your craft.
Okay. And what's one last piece of advice for students who want to lead?
Just do it. I mean, it's, people, if you want to lead, go lead, right? But ultimately, so many people are scared to take the initiative. They feel, they kind of have imposter syndrome sometimes. Hey, I'm a 22-year-old kid. Who possibly, who's going to leave their job to come work for me, or why would anybody listen? And one of the things that I've found is that to be an effective leader, you got to get into your ikigai, which is the intersection of what are you great at, what do you love to do, what does the world need, and what can you get paid for? And if you're there, that's so authentic, and it really gives you this, turbocharges your ambition and your energy, and it's so contagious. When people see that, they want to follow. Yeah.
And there are some great things today, but if students can only remember 10 seconds from this interview, what should it be?
Man, if they could only remember 10 seconds I think that ikigai point is really important. It's something that I've taken a lot of. I teach it to everybody that comes to work for me, and it's just, I think it's an unbelievable philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Steven, and thanks to everyone who's watching. If something resonated with you today, share it with a friend or mentor. These conversations are meant to inspire action and change. We'll see you next time in the CEO Speaker Series. Thanks again, Steven.
Thanks for having me.